In this tutorial, you're going to learn about your data sets and about how to clean your data. This is the next big step if you've created your own research projects, like you've carried out a survey, or even when you download a data set, they're often not necessarily clean. In this tutorial, you're hopefully going to understand how data sets are structured and how you're going to clean your data. Here you can see a very basic data set structure. You should be familiar with that. What you have is rows and columns. You should be familiar from Excel. And actually Excel is what you're going to use to clean your data as well. So remember we talked about variables and levels of measurement. What you can see is here that one column represents one variable. So in this particular image, we have variables like household income, household number of people in the household, gender. These are your variables. And each of those obviously have different levels of measurement. So gender, for example, is a nominal variable, male, female, and other. Each row, on the other hand, represents one observation. So you're asking people to complete a survey. In the survey, there's going to be 50 questions or however many questions, and what each of these questions collect is the data for that one variable. So you're going to ask people about what's your gender. There you go, there's your gender variable. So that's your very basic data set structure. It's not going to vary enormously. You're always going to have rows and columns, and you're going to just have to make sense of what they are. So rows are observations, columns are variables. That's your basic data set structure. The next thing really is once you've done your survey, once you've downloaded the data set from places like SurveyMonkey, Qualtrics, JISC surveys, you're going to need to clean your data sets. They're going to have lots of unwanted material in them. They'll have variables that you don't need. They'll have rows that are incomplete. They will have data missing, i.e. a variable might have some missing data that you need to deal with. So you're going to need to clean that data set and get it ready for analysis. And again, it's really, really basic, but also very, very important to do it right. Okay, the interesting thing is that most data analysis spend about 80 to 90% of their time cleaning the data and the rest of the time analyzing the data, because once you've got the clean data set, actually it's quite easy to say, okay, I want to say what effect does gender have on height, let's say, and you drag the two variables in and you get a result, and there you are. What takes the time is cleaning the data, and I'm going to show you the very basics. And although it sounds simple, and it is simple, it is tedious and can be very time consuming. So the first thing you need to do is you delete unwanted variables. So like I say, if you do an online survey, you're going to end up having lots and lots of variables that you don't need. You can see on the picture on the left, you have a started and end date, a status, progress bar, duration, IP address, whatever those things are. You might have asked questions about ethics. You know, are they over a certain age? They're all variables that you don't need for your data analysis. So what you're going to end up doing is you're going to delete them out. You're going to use Excel. It's probably the easiest way of doing it. You can do it in Python and R, but we're not covering that in these tutorials. So all you're going to do, delete those variables out, and as you can see on the picture on your right, you're going to end up having a data set that looks slightly more what you want it to be like. Once you've deleted the variables that you no longer need, you're going to delete unwanted headers, i.e. this one was downloaded for Qualtrics. As you can see, there's these three rows for your headers, your Q31, the actual question, and then another imported ID. So what you're going to do is you're going to delete them out. So you're going to delete the rows out the header rows out that you don't need. What you end up with is one header row, and that header row is going to have the variable names. So, when it comes back to gender, you're going to rephrase that question that is in there at the moment. You're going to put it as gender. What is really, really important to do is make a note of the change you do, because later as you import your clean data set into, let's say, something like Qualtrics, something like SPSS or Jamovi, you're going to add those questions back in as in the description. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to delete your unnecessary observations. You're going to have to think about this, and you're going to have to think about what you're going to delete. But what you're going to do is you're going to delete the observations that have lots and lots of missing variables. So you might say you'll delete every one out that's completed less than 75% of the survey, for example. But you're going to have to make a decision on which ones you delete out. So what you end up with is just observations that have generally answered most of the questions, or where you have data for most of the variables. Once you do that, once you've done all that, you end up with a data set that is relatively clean. So you're going to have only the observations that you want to have in your survey. You're going to have only the variables that you want in your survey. Nowadays, it's about cleaning the actual data that is within each of the cells. So here you can see, on the left, you can see an image of 3 different types of variables. So the first one's ordinal. They were asked what is the income, but it was in categories, so 25,000 to 30, 30 to 35, and so on. The next one was continuous, which was that how many children are in the household. And the final one was nominal, i.e. it was gender. So what you now need to do is you need to correct your levels in a sense. You see the outcome on the right. What we're going to do is, for ordinal data, I'll go into that later, but we're going to number it. For continuous variables, we're going to need to either put in missing values, and I'm going to cover that in a minute as well. And for nominal data, you can either give them numbers or you can leave the text as is. Although, as you can see with other, you might want to delete out the double dots there. So, missing values. If you have a data set that you download from Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey, when somebody doesn't answer the question, the Qualtrics will give them assign the missing value, usually of minus 99. For Jamovi, if you're using Excel, you just really want a blank cell, i.e. there's nothing in it. So what you're going to have to do is remove the minus 99 and leave it as a blank cell. If you're working with SPSS, you want to keep the minus 99 in, but tell SPSS that your missing value is minus 99. That way, what the computer does is knows that when in that minus 99 comes along, or whatever number your missing value is comes along, that it treats it as such. If you don't do that, what will happen is you'll end up with really messed up results, because it will calculate that as part of your mean or whatever you may do. As you see in the example on your right, you end up in this particular data set where some are indicated as missing values by minus 99, and there's also some blank spaces. So what you need to decide is, are you going to use all blank spaces for missing values or minus 99, but don't use both. With Jamovi, it recognizes blank spaces, so what you're going to do is replace all the minus 99s with blank spaces, and then when you upload in Jamovi, it knows that's the missing space. There are other ways of dealing with missing values, i.e. you might take the mean of a variable and add that in. There's just various other ways of doing it. I'm not going to go into that here, and you probably won't have to worry about it too much, because we're not doing the type of data analysis where we will need to input missing values. But there is a link in the tutorial on the website that tells you all about other ways of dealing with missing values. The one thing to remember is if you leave it as a missing value, when you're doing data analysis that requires values, it will not use those observations in your calculation. So in this particular case here, if I did some sort of calculation for all of the missing rows, they would be excluded from the analysis that I would do, that the computer does it for you. Okay, I mentioned numbers. So this goes really for ordinal variables, and to some extent I like doing it for nominal values too. So often what you'll have is you download your data set and you've asked them, let's say, a question on a Likert scale, strongly agree to strongly disagree. And what the variable is, it'll have text in it. So strongly agree, somewhat agree, neither agree or disagree, and so on. And for the computer, they will recognize that as text and will automatically have it as a nominal variable, because the computer can't make sense of that and it can't put it into order. So what you have to do in your Word doc, in your Excel spreadsheet, is change each of those labels. So strongly agree to a 0, somewhat agree to a 1, neither agree nor disagree to a 2. And suddenly what happens is the computer can see those numbers and it understands that there is an order. In the example here, you can also change it from, so have 0 as neither agree, disagree, -2 as strongly agree. As long as there's a logical order and the numbers follow on, it doesn't matter. But what you need for ordinal data in particular is the computer needs numbers, or you need to tell them the order in which your labels go in. Now in Excel, what you'll end up doing is you'll number them and then you'll reattach the labels in Jamovi later on. The only thing to keep in mind of and be aware of that when you add numbers instead of labels, don't mistake that particular variable for a continuous variable just because it has numbers. Because what happens is each of those numbers represents a label and it represents the rank that they're in. It doesn't turn it into a continuous variable. So again, really, really important to remember. I do the same for nominal variables as well. So if I have a variable like male and female, I'll give it a 0 and a 1 for a 0 for males, 1 for females. It's just so that the computer, for the purpose of the computer. And the last thing you'll do, let me just get rid of that message in the end. The last thing that you will do is you'll sometimes want to transform variables. So let's say you have a continuous variable, but you might want to know, is the difference between those people who are under 20 and over 20? And what you're going to do is you can transform the continuous variable into a categorical or into a nominal variable. That, again, if it's something that can be ranked, then they're ordinal. If you cannot rank these categories, then it's going to be nominal. You will also later on learn how to reduce data. These are statistical tests that you can do to reduce data, not covered here. But these are the basic steps for cleaning your data set and for understanding your data set and how to use it.